Goodman, along with Randy Cook. We're going to be telling you about our new company, FSLogix. And I'm going to be bouncing between reading glasses and not reading glasses the whole time. Please bear with me. How many out here are responsible for getting Windows applications onto their servers out there? Yeah, lots of hands. Okay, you're in the right place, guys. So, I recognize a lot of you. Some of you I've worked with before, some of I've known you. I've been here doing BriForums. I was an attendee at the first one. I spoke at all the other ones except for this last London one, and then this one. So I've been speaking at, I think, 12 out of 14 of these guys. But I've been around a lot longer than that. When I was here, when I first got into this industry, that guy was a product manager. Okay, so I have earned all these gray hairs for very good reason. I actually talked to him when he was moving from his house up in the Northeast down to Florida to start his job at Citrix. So that's how long I've been doing this stuff. And I think I'd be remiss if I didn't say something else about this guy. Some of you may know him, Ed Yacobucci. Most of you, if you do know him because he was one of the founders at Citrix. But I actually go back farther than that. I know him from when he wrote OS2, A Programmer's Guide. Those of you know him know that Ed was one of the founders. Well, I'm actually closer in age to Bill, his younger brother. But Ed went to tech. I went to the University of Georgia. Ed worked in software. He wrote the OS2 Programmer's Guide. I wrote Windows NT, a Developer's Guide, honestly, because I wanted to be like him. So the guy felt like I had to say something. The guy was my idol, okay? 1999, though, right before the turn of the century, he is giving a presentation on what the next millennium is going to look like. And what's he saying? Probably won't include Microsoft. We have to just plan on that. Okay, Microsoft as it exists, the way it's doing applications, probably won't be there, okay? Back then, though, it was Netscape that was going to do them in, okay? Well, I left the presentation with a few other people, and we thought about it, and we said, well, we got to get our Windows apps onto our Citrix servers at that time. I think this was NT 4.0 back when we were doing it. We went on our business, and here we are 14 years later, and Microsoft's still not out of business. We're still worried about how to get these applications onto our servers. But there's a new threat now, right? It's the mobile and the cloud, and Microsoft's probably still in danger of going out of business 14 years later. I mentioned I work for a company. I left about 18 months ago, and I've been playing professional poker ever since then, okay? That's not a joke. I'm not going to bet on Microsoft going away, and I doubt any of you are. So that means we still got to figure out how to get our applications onto our servers. All right, that's the reality check. That's what we're here to talk to you today, is if you're an application owner, we figured out a way here at FSLogix between my co-founder, Randy, I've got two other gentlemen here, Jeremy and Brian, are also our co-founders, how to make it easier for you to reduce the number of images that you're using, how to reduce the number of Citrix silos that you have, and generally how to handle those apps that are left in the base image after you've done other application virtualization techniques. And we're going to go through that today. Randy's going to give you some demonstrations. But before they do that, let's take a step back and see what I'm talking about. Okay, what I mean when I say what we want is we want to take one gold image. That's my little picture of a gold image. I'll tell you what that means in a second. And when a user connects up to that gold image, whether it's a desktop or Citrix or a VDI, they get the applications they're expecting there. Now another user logs in. They may have different responsibilities and maybe in a different department. They may be in a different organization that you both have under the same umbrella. There may be a different thing that you've hosted. What we're suggesting is they want the same image as well. And yet another, a third person, and fourth person, and so on, and so on. And you see, we don't think you should make different silos for all these different applications. We don't think you should have to go and make different images for all these. We think they should all be on one. We want that now. We don't want it to be next Thursday when we roll it out. We want it to be now. Now, this is a little subtle. I don't know if you can see that or not. What I'm showing here is user 2 there just changed job responsibilities, let's say. Or let's say she just got some additional training and she says, I'm now supposed to be on the XYZ app, okay? Let me go back, see what I'm showing here. Okay, I need those apps, guys. She calls up on the phone. What should happen is she should press a button and she gets those apps, all right? That fast. We shouldn't have to wait. We shouldn't have to go and do anything else as system administrators to enable this. So, I know we don't use golden images anymore. I know we don't use DVDs. This is just a picture. But the reason I felt like I could get away with this is as I'm making this PowerPoint, I look at what he has indicated there to save this presentation, okay? I was just talking to somebody yesterday who was saying, hey, if I showed that to my 10-year-old, do you think they'd know what that thing was? So when we're talking here the rest of the day about a gold image, I don't actually mean the DVD. I know how you guys deliver them differently. You know, I know that you just pass images off to your manufacturer and they come back as hard disks, or you do them as ISOs, or you build them yourselves. But bear with me on this, okay? And I'll continue to click my 3.5-inch disk icon every time I feel like saving, okay? Unless, of course, you're Gabe Knuth, then it would be an 8-inch floppy, I think so I may not be the oldest person here. I'm the second oldest one. Okay, so is that what we want? Would that help if we did this all one image, not have to worry about it? Okay. Is that what we're getting? Do we have that now? Are we there? No, we're not there. What have we been getting? We've been getting a little bit of this. Now, I took this off of a Tech Ed slide, okay? And this is a sequence of steps that you're supposed to do to sequence an application. Try to keep up. I don't know if you can read all that stuff here. It's actually quite a lot. And there are a lot of guys that are really good at doing this. But even those guys that are really good at doing this tell you they can't do it for all applications. I notice there's a little bit of fine print right there. I don't know if you can see that right there. It says, hey, drivers are not virtualized. Provide separate installers. The Tech Ed that I was at, they bring up these microphones. People walk up after it. And the one guy said, excuse me, how many vendors are actually supplying separate MSIs for their drivers? They said, well, we're talking to all of them to do that. How many Microsoft MSIs are going to come with separate installers? Well, we're talking with them and to get them to do that. How many apps are now coming with those separate installers so that you can virtualize just the app and not the drivers? The Office does, right? No.
Separate install for the service, right? So the licensing service, you can install that separately.
Yeah, but not any of the. So Adobe does, right? Yeah. No, not Adobe. All right. Let's not depend on that, okay? Because I don't know that that's coming from everybody. And this Tech Ed slide was back in 4.6. I know we're up to 5.0, and 4.6 is around for a long time. I'm talking about the competition's product right here. But truth is, there are a lot of positives in doing application virtualization. We're not suggesting that you should throw it all away. We're not suggesting that it's an either or. What we are suggesting is that maybe both of these live together quite nicely. right? This comes from the vendor I used to work for. I think they invented the term composite desktop. It's a concept of the user logs in, and at that point in time, you get them their user's personality. They log into a blank, empty desktop, and then you stream the applications to them. The whole idea of doing that is it's a value. The user gets only the applications that they're entitled to. And you can build generic images at that point. And in doing so, though there are some complications, well, now you can't have administrative privileges, right? Because if you're going to do the install right then, you need administrative privileges. But we can fix that because we're smart people. We'll put a big bubble around it so it wouldn't need administrative privileges. So that is the whole idea behind the composite desktop. My clicker's not clicking.
Yeah, our battery's getting weak on there.
All right, I'm going to use Randy as my virtual clicker here. So add that to his resume, CTO, and guy who will advance the slides for me. Thank you, sir.
That's how the requirements are going up.
Yeah, you know it. Okay. All right, isolation. I think this is isolation is a really good thing to use application virtualization for. There are certain applications that won't run well with others inside the container in the same session, and you can use a bubble around these applications to allow them to continue to run. They do things like what I was talking about before. If you're going to install them at runtime, they can isolate each key local machine. They can isolate the file system, so the application thinks it's writing to system locations, but it really isn't. It's being intercepted by application virtualization. So it's a positive for it there. Reduced deployment time. When Mark Templeton stopped by the office of the company I was working for back in the 90s to tell us about Citrix, back then what they were selling was the fact that you could get Lotus Notes up and running, and you only had to do it on your one server, and then you could broadcast it out by publishing this application out to everybody, and you didn't have to try to install it on all the desktops. So there is reduced deployment time, and that's a very valid positive that you get out of application virtualization. There are some downsides, though. Application doesn't run natively, right? If I'm intercepting all the calls, if I've sat back as an administrator at my desk and I have to wrap all these calls, because I don't know which calls he's going to make, I have to wrap them all, then the application isn't really running at its native speed, isn't it? It is got this whole layer between it and the operating system. Indeed, if you have any virtualized applications like that and you look in Task Manager, you won't see the application's exe name sometimes. I think that's still true in 5.0, isn't it? And you see it, and then, on 4.6, you actually saw you saw the client name.
You had to launch it first.
Yeah, you had to launch it first. This, I think, might be one of the biggest downsides. I know a gentleman who works in the UK who gets about £1,000 per app that he sequences, and he's continually busy. And he's just started on a project of 300 apps. And I'm thinking maybe instead of playing poker, I should have learned how to sequence, because that's some pretty good money. But that's also expensive for the organization. The organization's spending a lot of money it takes effort and time to sequence. And I wish I could look at an application right now, one of the ones that's in your list. I wish I could look at it and say, oh yeah, I know that one just from looking at it, it's going to sequence. But if it's an internally written app, maybe from your IT department produce it, I honestly don't know that answer until I start into it. That's why it can be time consuming. That's why you need a super, really intelligent expert guy, at least one who's more experienced than me, to help you with your sequencing. And again, not everybody can be packaged or sequenced, right? We're still having these issues with these apps. With drivers, COM+ apps come to mind. I don't know if anybody's doing this, but you have an app with a dongle, maybe on a physical laptop or something like that. That's a difficult one to virtualize too, so I understand. Okay, so what happens is you get into this situation and you end up with more than one gold image, And in addition to that, you end up with applications still in the base image. So this gentleman that's doing his 300 apps that I know about in the UK is telling me about 34% of his apps are still in the base image. So anyway, that's why he called us, because he needs to continue making his $1,000 an app to get through all 300, but his guy he's spending the money with is saying, why am I doing this if I still have a third of my apps in the base image? Is there any other way to manage those apps as well? And then, all right, so I got to ask this question. Somebody else out, what's this concept of a departmental install? Where did that, I started hearing that, I don't know, somewhere, I think Citrix made an acquisition a while back. We started talking about departmental installs. That just sounds more complicated to me, not less complicated. Not only do I not want to manage what goes in each and individual department, but what if I have separate images within the department? That doesn't, I'd love to be able to get back down to what we want. All right, so let's go over it again one more time. What we want, one image, each user, right there, single golden image. Each user sees the apps that they are entitled to, but don't make it up to me. Let's do it policy-based. All right, let's set up a policy. Maybe Active Directory users and groups would be, a nice start. Go ahead. For all apps. That's not that. Just all apps, including, go ahead, all platforms. All right? Because if we could do that, I think maybe we'd get us closer to what we really want. So, thank you for joining us. This is FSLogix. Hello, world. Good to see y'all. Okay? Good to be back working again. Playing poker is such a pain in the neck. I'd much rather they're intelligent people, but I'd much rather deal with you intelligent people. You're not trying to take my money. So, that's fantastic. Okay, so let's go take a look. What is FSLogix about? All right. Remember I said this was Randy Cook? Some of you may remember Randy had a company called FSLogix back, how many years ago?
2002 to 2004.
10 years ago, all right? Well, we guys got together and we decided we got unfinished business. So, being the new century and everything, we added an X on the end of it, and now we're FSLogix. All right? Yeah, so let's see. What is an FSLogix app? Show me, Randy. Dynamic application visibility. That means when the user logs in, we're going to make sure they get the right applications. Apps are going to run natively. That's what you asked for. I saw your heads, Bob. Go ahead. Not going to have to sequence to get this done. But we understand that there may be situations, there may be times where you do have some conflicts running around. We're going to treat those individually at runtime. We call this runtime isolation, and we're going to go over that. But the whole concept is, instead of putting a big bubble around the whole app, we're just going to put little tiny pieces around that parts of the app that need it. And more reduced deployment time. That's our goal here. Let's get these deployments out there faster and quicker. Let's do it for even apps that you've already virtualized. And let's do it, apps with drivers. Keep going. One more time. Let's tell them where we're going to do it, Randy. We're going to do it on Citrix and RDS, and we're going to do it on VDI, and your screen is cutting off. Can you see that? We're going to do it on DI and Hisical, and then we're also going to do it on Itrix and RDS. So, okay, the presentation's in beta too. We'll fix that. So those of you guys, I don't know if you missed it earlier when Gabe told me that I was sharing out my presentation last night, be Apple Share. A couple of you should have called me and told me that that was going to happen. I could have this fixed by now. All right, we'll fiddle with that and see what we can do. So it sound interesting? You want to see it? Should we see something? Okay. Before we get in there, let me tell you what it isn't. All right. Sometimes when you want to define something, you easiest way to define it is what it's not. This isn't a way to get it. This isn't Altiris in which I'm going to take from here and push your application out there. It isn't SCCM where I'm going to have you click on a link and it's going to go install at that point in time. You can use these, and we work with these quite nicely. What ours is about is after it's already on the system. You're just going to build an image, you're going to install it onto the system the way you normally have, and from there we're going to take over. Which means that you can take our software and put it onto your existing system that already has apps on it and start managing them that way. You don't have to install into a separate install for us. Pretty tall otter, Bud. You want to show them some of it?
Sure.
Let's click one more and see if we can. All right. I'm going to turn it over to Randy here. I'll tell you, between Randy and raise your hands, guys. This is Jim Huron and Brian Madden. This is the brain trust of the company. These are the only 3 guys on earth to get me out of retirement. All right. But I'm pretty psyched up about this. So let's go.
You say brain trust. It reminds me of Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? Remember the brain trust in that movie? Yeah. Let's see. How do I pause this so we can come back to it? Do you know?
Alt,
to exit?
I think you can Alt-Tab. Can you Alt-Tab around it?
No? Well, we'll jump back in, I guess.
All right. We'll come back.
All right. So, that is not the optimal resolution. Okay. For some reason, I don't think my mic's working on this one. Yeah. Green light.
So I don't know if you saw these gentlemen over here. They were standing in the booth out front, the audio-visual booth. So I went up to them and I was saying, I don't know if these reading glasses are the right ones for me anymore. I'm having trouble, and it's not that visual, buddy. No, get out of here.
Very good. I'll just yell, and we'll see how it goes. Okay. So what we're going to demonstrate for you here is you'll see I've got a Google Chrome shortcut here on the desktop. Can you hear me, Doug, back there? Okay. All right.
Yeah, all right, so you're in a virtual machine on top of your laptop, but we're simulating, what, a 2012 server here you virtualized?
This is, I'm remoted into a 2012 server.
Okay, and we're installed on there, are we?
Yep.
Okay.
So if I come in here to program files, you'll see there's a Google directory. This is where Chrome installs now. It used to be somewhere else, but this is where all the stuff is. And a normal installation of Google Chrome. So what I'm going to do is make that disappear here. And I want to do this so you can kind of see it. We had to change resolutions here. Sorry, all my windows are a little flaky here. All right, so things I want you to watch. I want you to watch this Google subdirectory and the Google Chrome icon here. And I happen to have a rule set defined for Google Chrome. We'll talk about what this is and what all this is. I'm just showing you the magic right now. So let's copy that into there.
We'll do that Julia Child thing. The rules are already built, right? I think you turned my volume up, but that's good. The rules are already built, and we'll just take them out of the oven and put them into the rule folder right now. But we'll go over how you do rules and how you make them. But basically, this simulates that what Randy just showed is a rule that says for this particular user, we're not going to show them Chrome. So when they remote in, they won't have Chrome available to them. It can be any application, really, and we'll go over how to make all of those things. You have any other visibilities you want to show us? You want to fix that and bring Chrome back, or what do you want to do?
Let's just take that back and get rid of that. And there it is, right back again.
So to the user who logs in, it appears that Chrome's been deinstalled. Okay, so the traces of Chrome that we've done have just gotten rid of it. So you can have a situation where you have one image and you have one users wanting to use Chrome, other users wanting to use a different browser, and you could set it up so they only see the browser that you want them to have in that situation. You can imagine that for other applications as well, and we're going to go over some of those other applications. Are we back to the presentation, or are we? Hey, yeah.
Hi, in the Chrome example, does that take away file type associations, default browser, all that other stuff?
Yeah, so excellent question.
Yeah, so I don't know if everybody heard the question. The question was, does the disappearing of an application take away all of the file type associations, URL associations, COM objects, all that kind of stuff? And the answer is yes. And we've got a few more demos lined up here where we'll show that in detail.
Okay.
Take a minute to get back where you were. Sorry.
Okay. How do other guys do it when they're doing their demo and their presentation at the same time? Do they have two machines? Do they struggle like this? So anyway, you can just skip forward, and I'll just go through it all again in case someone came in late. I'll give you the Sean Brass presentation. Okay, reality just ahead. What we want, DVD. Let's go. Hey, the picture.
What slide are we on?
I don't know. We'll find when you hit 15.
Nice question.
Yes, sir.
Meanwhile, so I know that you guys are coming pretty new out with this. Have you spoken with any of the vendors yet, like those that have licensed versions? Are they willing to accept this as not being an install?
Yes, so I have gone out to a couple of the big ones and talked to them, one in particular had a customer who thought it would be a great idea to just send his whole image off to Dell. And when his palette of PCs came in, they're a physical desktop shop, he could just dole them out because they're all identical to everyone in the organization. And this person that we spoke to that turned us on to this customer said, you realize that you're only paying for 5 licenses of your accounting program, but all 6,000 of your employees now have access to it. You owe us $400,000. So in this particular case, there is no intent to defeat the licensing. This isn't a way to get, and if you're thinking that, I'm sorry, this isn't the app for you. There is no way to turn what is meant to be per user into concurrent licensing. This is still, if your application is named users, your named users are there. If you're administrator, and if you were to run any of the auditing programs that check that, they would confer with this. If you look at the licensing for some of those who have a Citrix policy, we match with that Citrix policy with respect to named users. If you look at remote app, for example, you can put a lot of apps in remote app on RDS and only pay the licensing for that one app. If you want to think it in that type of scenario, we would fit in something similar to that.
Next.
Yeah. So when I think about isolation, it always seems to me like almost like being in jail and being in prison, be wrapped in razor wire. When you think about what you have to do to an app when you just put a big bubble around it, you stop it from doing inter-process communication. Sure, you stop it from needing a administrative privilege to install, but you do so much more to it when you do that, that I think that isolation, what you really ought to do is, in the next slide, this is how I want you to think about isolation. I get this image off of Google Earth. I don't even know where this is, but it just looks like a paradise to me that just happens to be isolated. Over down here in the corner, these are bungalows that you can go sleep in, that you're actually out on the water. Yeah, that's the kind of isolation I want you to think about with our product. You're not going to have to wrap it in all kinds of razor ribbon to get it to work. We're going to be able to isolate everything runtime. So the concept of runtime isolation is our next demonstration. Remember it?
Slide number 33. Okay.
33.
Okay. For this demo, I want to show you some basic redirection. So, excuse me. We have the capability to redirect 4 different types of objects. You can do file, directory, registry value, registry key. In this demonstration, I'm going to be working with file redirection. I've got an application here called KeyPass, which is installed, and here's just off the root of the C drive in its own directory.
Let me tell. Can I tell them what's wrong with KeyPass? All right. So KeyPass writes its ini file and stores user settings in any file that it keeps in the program files directory. Now, you know, on Windows 7 with user account control, you could do some stuff in which if that wrote, it would automatically go off into the, drawing a blank, the non-roaming section of the app data, I think is where it is. Imagine a situation where on terminal services, though, that's not going to suit you very well, especially if you're remoting to more than one terminal server, or you're being load balanced to more than one terminal server. So, Randy, I came to you, I got KeyPass, I want to put my settings in it, you want to put your settings in it, and tell me how that's going to work on terminal services, please. You know, I got my whole department Citrix users here.
Yeah, that's not going to work. So, as you can see, when I ran KeyPass, it created this ini file right in that directory, which works great if you're a single user. But, you know, if I switch over to this other person I've got here, and I run KeyPass, I'm going to get the settings that the administrator used, and if I try to save mine, I'm going to either overwrite his, or if I probably don't have rights. Actually, Tommy doesn't even have rights to write into that directory, so his changes are just going to get thrown away. So what we're going to do is put a little redirection rule in. First, I'm going to get rid of this file. And I've got one of these predefined here. And let me show you real quickly. I'll give you a little preview of this. But you can see this is a redirect rule that we're creating. And it says anytime somebody tries to access the KeyPass ini file, which is in the KeyPass directory, I want to redirect that to the user profile path, put it in the KeyPass directory there, and name it KeyPass ini. And I have the option to copy that if I want to have the original one copied there, so there's some default settings or something like that, I can do that. So let me just drop this in for you. Okay, so that is now effective. So if I do the same thing that I did before, which is now administrator, run KeyPass, I'm going to get prompted for the same kind of stuff. I'm going to change to oblique again. Okay, so this is different now because there's not an ini file that got created here. If I look over under the administrator's users folder, I have now got a directory here with the KeyPass ini file in it. Let me show you the other user doing the same thing. So now Tommy comes in, he runs it, he makes his changes the way he likes. And not only are they sticky where they weren't before because they didn't have rights to do it, they don't conflict with admins. Okay, so if we look here, you can see that Tommy's ini is over here.
And so that was already installed. I suppose we could have packaged it up. I know a company I used to work for, ThinUp, was really, really good at doing things like that. But that didn't take any effort, really, right there. So it's a little bit if that's all your application needs is one file. I know some of you have come to talk to me, you have situations like that because you have some internal apps that write to the root drive and things like that. I'm not sure we need to sequence the entire thing just to solve that one problem. All right, you aware of the dishwasher analogy on isolation? Anybody? What, this is new to you guys? You haven't heard the dishwasher analogy? I love it. Okay, here's the thought. You have a party, 20 people come over, you get a sink full of dishes. I know what my wife says. You need to scrape those before you put them in the dishwasher, okay? I know what I do. I put them in the dishwasher and I turn it on, and then when I open it up, if there's one still dirty, then I scrape it then and wash it. Why scrape 20 dishes when you really only have to scrape one, okay? The dishwasher analogy says, why package the whole application if it's only one resource that needs isolation? Why do everything for the registry and the file system when maybe only the file system needs help, or only the registry, or whatever? Yes, sir?
I just have a question about isolation there. What about, like, I'm just going to mention, say, dirty word here, what about things like Java, that, they're constantly being updated and stuff, but at least in our environment, you always run into a situation where, there's a security exploit in a version of Java, but we can't upgrade to the newest one because of some business critical app that relies on that older insecure version of Java. So, with like other technologies like that, or like a remote app or something like that, I can say, okay, there's just, Firefox with the old version of Java, and it's kind of isolated.
Mm-hmm.
Can you do anything with FSLogix in that respect?
So one of the things that we're talking about here is runtime isolation at the session level, okay? I have a roadmap slide buried at the very end that talks about roadmap at a per process level. But right now, the way it works is you could set it up for one user would get Java 6 update 25, and the next one would get, next user could run apps that is Java 7, or Java 6 update 7, Java 7 update 25, or what have you, at a session isolation, okay? That's one way to do it. The other way that you're doing it, we call Citrix silos, right? We'll take a silo, a Citrix machine, we'll put that one bad app out there, and then we'll remote to it. That way we know we won't have to get conflicts with anything else. That is the other way that we're doing these things. And that kind of just segues into my next session of why we have Citrix. Is anyone, Citrix users out there, do you have separate silos that you need for particular, are you doing it to isolate applications that are perhaps not getting along? Like this gentleman, he said he has Java apps that are running different versions for different reasons. He puts them on Citrix servers. Do we see that as well? It's commonplace? Okay, so there's that reason. We also have just other conflicts in other applications as well. And you end up with more than one Citrix server, and what the goal of this next demonstration is to talk how we can reduce those. You didn't catch the presentation last night when I accidentally shared it, did you? Because if you would have told me we would have had but you can come by the booth and see the Java. I did see that. You can come by the booth. Anything that we can't demonstrate here because we don't have set up on the laptop, you can come by the booth when you show the Java 6, Java 7 update and how that would work. But let's show some silo consolidation. In this particular case, what we chose to pick is we're going to show
Visio and Visio Viewer.
So I have some users that are using Visio, other users that just want to use the viewer. I don't want to pay the license on this hand for every user to use Visio when all they should be doing is viewing it. So one way to solve that would be to put Office and Visio on one server and only direct the guys who had licenses to get to that server. That would be one way to solve it, wouldn't it, guys? They're saying, no, use FSLogix. Okay, get to the demo. All right. Okay.
All right, so in this demonstration, we have both Visio and Visio Viewer installed on the same machine. And as you probably know, Visio wants to win that battle when it's installed and make itself available to all users. So we want to show here that when administrator launches a document or to edit a document with Visio, we want the Visio Professional to open up, but we want the viewer to be available for everybody else. So luckily for me, I just happen to have a couple of rules that will help us there. All right. So for the administrative user, nothing has changed. He launches, he gets Visio Professional. Let's come back over to our other user over here. He's got another document here. And you'll notice it popped up in the viewer.
I think earlier you were asking about file type associations as well. That is something you have to do. You have to handle the file type associations in this as well as part of the rules to get this to work correctly. You know, I see that with Adobe, Acrobat, and the Reader, PowerPoint, and the PowerPoint Viewer. There'd be a variety of things that would go along in that, fall in that vein. Apps that you want to restrict your Java to. Come by the booth. One other one we have that I know it's trivial, but one of the reasons we don't like to give users administrative privileges is that they open up IE and add the Google toolbar. And if we gave them administrative privileges, it would give everyone the Google toolbar the way that's set up. Question?
So if you have an app that installs the service, you know, does it remove the service as well if you don't have the role applied to you?
Well, it doesn't remove the service for you. It makes that particular user just think that service isn't there. Okay, so it's on a session boundary. One of the other demonstrations that Randy wanted to do, these guys wanted to do, was they came from a company that made a really good antivirus product, but they know some of you might use a separate antivirus product. So we're thinking about doing one with McAfee in one session and Symantec in another session. I mean, if you want to talk about isolation, we're now talking isolation down to the drivers. The reason we didn't bring it, but I'm going to bring it up to you guys, see if it would have made sense. I talked this, we previewed this to somebody, and they said, anybody who puts two antivirus protection systems on the same Citrix server needs to be fired. So we didn't do that demonstration. I know you would never do that, but that gives you the level of what you would do. It's on the session boundary right now. So if one user is using an app with a service, that next user isn't going to have access to it. Brad's got a great question. Go ahead.
No, but the services live in their own session. So are they all running always?
They were always still running. We're not stopping them from running.
So you can choose there. So you can say if you want to have an application on your machine and not have it be visible the whole time that system's booted up, you can actually create visibility rules that will hide the service and the driver entries for the whole time that system is booted. If you want to be able to have users use the application dynamically, then you would not hide the system and drivers from the system, so they actually get loaded. But then when the user, depending whether they have visibility to the application, can run it that way.
And multiple versions of the same app coexist?
In different, so the question is, can multiple versions of the same app coexist? They can in separate sessions to a degree. There is probably an application or two that I can think of that's what isolation is for. If you need the application in the same session, that's what app virtualization is for. Between sessions, though, we can put some boundaries in there.
Okay, even if they have conflicting keys? Often multiple versions can't coexist because they use the same registry key and stuff like that.
Yeah, so we can do some redirection on that. I'll tell you where we're going to get into some trouble if they're both trying to connect to the same database or they're different databases and things that are client-server type issues and stuff like that. You can see some issues that would happen there as well. Where are we? Are we demoing?
Yeah, we're finished with that demo. So,
Okay.
any questions? Any further questions on that?
We don't have anything to specifically hide environment variables. Once the session is up and running, the environment does get loaded out of the registry, so you can change the visibility of those, and when the user logs in, that visibility will apply.
You could also redirect the user to a different key using like a key pass demo and have the user see a
we didn't get into it, and we'll go into rule creation, but Brad asked the question about different apps using the same key. Didn't you have to do some redirection for the Visio?
We
Or-
have for some of our demos.
Okay,
Yeah, for that
yeah.
one we haven't, but.
Okay.
Yeah, so the path thing is interesting because you'll just have you'll have some path entries to non-existent directories basically. So that's how it would work normally. But if that's a problem for you, yeah, we have some tools that can work around some of that stuff.
Yeah, work around using that paths now.
Yeah.
Is my preference these days.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's a nice thing. All right. Let's see. I think we were on 36, if I recall correctly. Yep.
Okay, so rollback time. You ever put out an app too prematurely and it wasn't tested really great? And so here's how we used to do my testing, okay? All right, it loaded. I saw the splash screen. I don't even have a login to this app, okay? I'm not even going to be able to get into it, and I'm certainly not going to run it once I do go into it, but let's put it out on the next PVS image, okay? When that happens, we may not be, and that's life. I know, I work there, I know that's life. Sometimes you're going to put it up, sometimes you get an app from a vendor that you have to roll back because you did something wrong. So here's a situation with two apps, and we're going to switch between them. In this particular case, we have Adobe, both the number 9 version of Reader and the Adobe 11, and customer calls me up, some user calls me up and says, oh, this is not working for me here in Adobe, can I go back to 9? Or she calls up and says, I haven't been trained yet on 11. I know we were rolling it out and we were supposed to do the Southeast, but I was out and I didn't get trained. Can I be back on 9 for a little while until I go to training next Tuesday? Or just the opposite. I've been trained. Why am I still on 9? I want to go to the new version. And that could be Office. That could be any of your internal apps. It could be just about any app. Let's take a look at that and see what that would look like in this scenario.
Okay. All right, so for this demonstration, let me get rid of these real quick. Like Kevin said, we've got Acrobat 11 Pro installed. We have Acrobat 9 Pro installed, and we have Adobe Reader 11 installed. I've got a PDF file here on the desktop. If I right-click and I say open with, I get all 3 of those as options. I can't remember what the default is, but if I click on that, probably 11. Yeah, so Acrobat 11 is what is the default now. So let's do something here. Let's hide 11 real quick. Okay, so you'll notice that the shortcut disappeared. You know, the program files all disappeared. You guys believe me by now. If I right click here and I say open with, I see Adobe 9 and Adobe Reader. 11 is no longer visible on the system. Okay, so now we've got 11 deployed. It's being hidden, and it's now delivery day. It's Monday morning at 8 a.m. and we're supposed to switch over to the new version. I've got just a batch file right here that does a quick copy and delete of those rule files. So just remember, I've got Adobe 9 here. So now I've switched to Adobe 11. If I right-click here and say open with, I get my Adobe 11 or Reader options, and 9 is now no longer visible. And as Kevin said, you know, some group calls up and says, hey, this isn't working for me, or I haven't been trained on this application yet, whatever that is, you know, it's just as easy as we showed you before to go back to 9. And, you know, if I'm doing this over, prove to you that it's all working.
You didn't have to log off there, did you? You didn't actually have to log off? If I was using it, though, it would apply on the next time that you started the application. Of Question?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask, like, how do you deploy the rules? Is there a console or something?
Yeah. You did see the presentation. Don't give me that. Okay. Let's go back and he's asking, you're curious, how do we get these rules? How do you deploy them and stuff like that? There's a whole architecture Randy's going to show you here, but right now your best way is you get those rules into the rules folder on the machine that they're controlling. There is no database for it to connect up to. There is no server that it needs to stream them down. Each machine individually handles all its rules. So if you blast out those rules to each machine, that's how they get there. We do that so we'll be more scalable, because we didn't want a single point of failure, the bottleneck, having to worry about it streaming it down or connecting back up to a database or a mothership.
Are we back in the presentation or are we going demo? Okay.
I can't remember. I don't know. More presentation. Come on, they're hungry for it.
All right.
I think the very next thing says show demo how rules are, but whatever. Come on. Oh, no, first the recap. I told you what I was going to tell you, then I told you, now I'm going to recap it, okay? We think we're trying to hit that sweet spot between AppVert and policy-based application control and image management, okay? And we're doing that by, leveraging what's really good about AppVert, getting along with AppVert where we need it. This isn't an either or, and it's important that I keep making that. And so, how do we get there? We create rules. Those rules apply to applications, which we can set them up based on users and groups and Active Directory. We could do them manually if we felt like it. And we call those policies. And so it was 2 slides, and you're right back in. How about that?
Okay. Let's show you a little bit about the rule creator that we've got. It's just a simple application. I can say new. And put it in staging. And what this does is it goes out and it enumerates the applications that you've got on the system and shows those to you. You can choose these. Once you do that, you click on scan, and it actually goes through and scours the system, and it's looking for all kinds of different things here. There's a long list that we can tell you. There's COM objects, services, drivers, shortcuts, program files, directories, all of the registry stuff, program IDs for registration, open with registrations, et cetera, et cetera. And it will put all of those into what we call a rule file here. Let me open up one of these for you. Let's see, what have we got? I think, Kevin, you had a good one. Let me pull up the Google toolbar. Okay. So Kevin got using this a couple of days ago. I guess it was the night before BriForum started, and started fiddling with the toolbar stuff, and he just did a detect on the Google toolbar, and this is what it came up with. And as you can see, there's a 32-bit registration for class ID and a 64-bit, and a program install directory. And that's basically what it takes to hide the Google toolbar. So he put that in place, started his browser, and Shazam, no more Google toolbar.
You could do that. Are you ready to say how you can do that for individuals?
Yeah,
or
let me pop that up.
I'll
Here.
pop that up there, all right.
Thing here. This one has an entry for everyone that says this hiding rule does not apply for everyone, but it does apply to user 1. So this particular rule will only take effect for user 1.
So user 1 doesn't want the Google toolbar. User 1's not going to get the toolbar. Everybody else will get it. You could also do it the opposite, right? You could say this rule applies for everyone, but does not apply for user 1. Therefore, that would user 1 would be the only one who would get that toolbar.
And again, Kevin mentioned this before, but it's important, these user objects, these objects can be user objects, they can be local or domain objects, groups, all that kind of stuff. Anything else you want to see here?
Yeah, show me some more roles. So when you showed a redirection role, you showed is the Java rule in there?
I don't have it in here.
Yeah, it's in there.
Yeah, question?
I was just gonna say, so there's really no back-end infrastructure related to this, other than you generate these files and use a system you have, service line, CCM, X copy, whatever, just to deliver it to those directories?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the comment is, there's no back end for this, you just, whatever system you've got, there's two reasons for that. One is we're starting to wait on time to write one. And the second reason is, we don't want to replace what you've already got. You've got something, we want it to be able to plug into that easily and make it work that way. It's not to say we won't do it in the future, but right now,
Part of your report, what rules are applied to do residential access before. So there's no bypass as part of your report.
So there's logs that you can collect up, and actually we're talking to Splunk to see if we're Splunkable or whatever that takes. But then you can write a report based off the back of that.
and we should also mention that, of course, your software inventory tools will properly reflect what's visible
That's
on
right.
that machine. So.
Any more questions? Okay. Let's go
Back to
back.
slides.
Yeah, let's go back to slides.
Can you set the rule to apply on a machine basis rather than a user basis?
Is OU in this release, or that's roadmap? I already know that answer. It's roadmap. Yeah, we had that request just the other day to do it just based on machine. So like it was someone who's doing a hosting, and based on companies that come in, what the company wants to do is they want to, or a company they acquired, in this particular case, exactly what happened. They were still on the 2007 version of QuickBooks based on the OU. That's what they wanted to get. Whereas their company had already moved to 2013, and they were busy migrating, but they just hadn't got there yet. So,
So you can, if you, it kind of violates our rules where you have the same rule sets everywhere, but you could put down a specific rule set for that machine, and of course it would hide it for everybody on that machine. You could do that.
Okay. All right, one more question? Yeah, an additional question? Yes, sir.
Can you have preemptive rule sets? Can you have in anticipation of the user installing something that you may or may not want?
I don't know if this is a security product, Dave, but there's nothing stopping you from doing that, okay? There's nothing stopping you from creating a rule and putting it out there on Angry Birds or something along those lines. But knowledge combined with intent can defeat any system, and I wouldn't use this as a security product because I wouldn't run Notepad if you were blocking it. I'd change it to DavePad and we'd be good.
It is an interesting use case there.
I'll tell you the one I want it for is the ask.com toolbar.
Yeah.
My mom has got all of those toolbars installed, every single one of them. Yeah. So there's an interesting use case there for software delivery. So you can deploy the rule set that's going to hide something and say, I want this to be hidden from everybody except for the system who's going to install it. And then you can run the install while somebody's logged on, they don't see anything or whatever. And then at some point in time, you can just flip the switch and it's there.
I just got the couple minutes to go thing. I'm going to whip through the last couple of slides here. Last one is, does anybody still have some Windows 7 stuff and any migration issues? The answer is no, we don't. Thank you, I'm glad. If you were holding off just because you needed to do some isolation on an app that had a driver, you could think about it for that. This one could take the rest of the time, so I'm going to go through it really, really quick though. Gabe and I did a thing on user-installed applications in which we went out and we did all the vendors and we asked them, And then the company I was at did a survey and found out that most administrators don't want users installing their own applications. There's a variety of reasons why. It may not be licensed. The user who installs his own application and gets it to work correctly may very well become more productive. The user installs his own app and it doesn't install correctly. The studies have shown take up to a week to figure out what's going on with the app that they want. So if you're supposed to be an accountant and you're supposed to be closing the books, but you really want this special calculator, you just wasted a bunch of the company's time trying to install the application. Yet, you can't tell them no. You just can't tell them no. What's that, Finding Nemo? Mine. What if you just installed it for that one user and just made it visible for that one user? The only regression testing you're going to have to do is for that user. If the user gives it to you, since you don't have to sequence, it's not going to take you too long to put it into the image. With disk space being cheap now, that's not an answer as to not do it anymore, right? It becomes, a user-based install becomes an application that the user doesn't have to install anymore, but can still have it. They can still have mine. Less than 5 minutes, very quickly, let's talk about persistent versus non-persistent VDI. I don't know who's a fan of each. When I talk to the persistent guys, they tell me that is the way to go. That's the way we're always going to go, and that's that. And I'm thinking, wow, using something like some of those tools we have out there now, including Ilio, you could do single instance store, have persistent disks for all your users. They'd dedupe down to one instance in this case, right? Now, if you wanted to do non-persistent, and there's a wise guy in the back of the audience who told me a couple of weeks ago that this was a really elegant solution for 2007, okay? But as your users go more mobile, as they stop using Windows applications more and more, they start getting more SaaS applications, what's going to happen? I'm thinking, hey, concurrent user model on VDI. I still give them a desktop, but if I'm only using it infrequently because I have so many mobile and I have so many SaaS apps, I might be able to save a license. It's like the VDI version of hot desking. If I have a continuity of operations, right, what the government calls COOP, should one section of their town get flooded or snowed in and you can't get to work for a pandemic or something like that, why have a one-to-one VDI desktop set up for them when they normally work in the office? Have a small fraction. You could save a lot of money there by just making them available. The problem is, gosh, what apps do I put on there? Well, you put them all on there. You know you're going to have the right app for this user when they log in. Okay, come by the booth, all right? See more demos. We're booth 21. We've got stuff to show you, all right? Go by our website. Go on Google, social media, and come by and get some really cool swag. That is a 16 gig drive. I took a picture of it. See, that's my business card. That's how small it is. 16 gig drive, come by and pick one of them up. And any more questions that you have, they're running us off, but we'll be happy to answer them all session. We're here till Thursday. Try the lamb. Thank you.